Howdy, guys, and welcome to my first episode. So, today we're going to be combining two different Hawkeye designs, one of the classic designs from the Marvel Golden era, if you will, and the modern MCU design. Most of my series about these kind of things will revolve around whatever it is I'm drawing, any kind of hardships I faced while combining the two designs, and also just whatever I feel like that day. So let's start off right here. The first thing to get right was the pose. The pose was probably the thing that it caused a lot of rough drafts. I took a lot of them out actually. This is just one of the last ones I did before I decided to just like scrap it all together and go with this one instead. Um, it was pretty fun to come up with a dynamic pose because I don't know anything about archery. I've had some references here and there. I've looked at a lot of the MCU movies to see how Hawkeye handles his bow, and it was quite a challenge to get these proportions right, the framing, the way the body curves, how it stands with the bow. It was all something I wasn't used to. I'm not used to drawing characters with weapons like this. Swords maybe, but crossbow and bow and arrow, it's never been something I do too often. You can see me struggle a lot with the placing of the hands especially. But that's besides the point. Once I got the form down, I felt like I was more in my element, as you can see me like more confidently stroke the pen across the guidelines I'm making here. Something I like to do here, as you can see, is I like to space out everything accordingly, make sure that they're all leveled. Put these little red lines here. This is what I use to make sure that everything's aligned with the other body parts. Everything's what's it called, leveled, as it were. And one of the first challenges I had was making the bow not look so lopsided. And I still don't think I did a particularly good job of it. I wanted to make a more modern looking bow, but then I realized that the details were just coming out just wrong. So I go with a more simplified design as opposed to what I had in my head. But part of the learning process when you're becoming an artist is just seeing what you can do right now and reflecting on how much you've improved as time goes on. And that's something that you can do anytime you want. And learning how to combine these two designs was a challenge in and of itself because you're combining like the classic crazy comic book style from like the 80s and such with a more modern, almost militarized aesthetic of modern day MCU. And one of the things you can tell right off the bat is just the colors. The colors from the 1980s ones is just so freaking loud and bombastic. It's got like these bright purples and blues, and it just becomes like a cacophony of colors to the senses. And it's spectacular to look at, it really is. As opposed to that, where the great contrast to that is the modern MCU designs, which almost looks like a paramilitary battle dress uniform, which is kind of the point they're going for. He is part of SHIELD, a branch of the military in the MCU. So that I get what the aesthetic was, but combining the two made for a really nice counterbalance that I wasn't expecting. Now here you see me draw the little handlebar. I didn't know what to do with this thing. I still don't think it came out right. I've drawn this bow like dozens of times, and every time I did it, it just looked wrong. So I decided to just, bite the bullet, see what you get with what you got. How good can you make a bow look with your current skill set? I didn't want to trace, and I tried drawing from reference as much as I could, but after a while, I'll say to myself, look, the handle isn't a big deal. It's going to be covered mostly by the hand anyway. Just let it go and move on. And that's a concession I had to make. And part in this series, you're going to see me tackle old projects like this maybe a year or two from now, just to see how much I've improved or if I've improved at all. And it was just a lot of time saving there once I made the decision of look, just draw the handle, let the hand cover it, and go from there. So right here, you're gonna see me get into my element because something I do a lot of is I do a lot of proportionate drawings of people. I don't do a whole lot of weapons or tools or assets like that, but I do a lot of body proportion drawings. It's something I thoroughly enjoy doing. I have a very cartoon style proportion for human anatomy. I did spend a good chunk of time like just referencing anatomy, and you can see some of the muscle groups being defined here as I make them. I forget the names for it, but like it's just something I picked up as I stare at the human body for untold amounts of hours. And this is just one of those things. Like the arm here, I learned how to draw the muscles in the arm just by going to the gym. And as creepy as that may sound, I just stare at people at the gym. You know, I see the way their muscles contract, the way they move, especially in certain poses, what gets more pushed out to the other. what gets more pushed out, as they flex or as it were, you know. And same thing with me. I'm my own reference sometimes. Like the way the breastplate hangs off of the chest, the way the muscles contort, like right there, it's probably one of my favorite. Like shoulder blades are some of my favorite things to draw just because they look so cool when I draw armor over them. But that's besides the point. Now, the head was a really big sticking point for me because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know if I wanted to go with like the more modern haircut aesthetic or to go with a classic uh, cowl going on. I really, really wish I could find a way to incorporate the cowl in a way that didn't look so silly because this looks like a nice middle ground between the two when I'm all done with everything. So in the end, I decided to just cut it out and not use the cowl. But it was quite a decision. I left the top of the head pretty much naked for a good chunk of this entire creation because I just didn't want to touch it. Now, one thing I did have fun doing was mixing the colors. The colors actually go together very, very well. I was actually shocked at how well they actually coordinate with each other with like this really dark, almost like navy blue purple kind of thing going on with this bright, almost magenta color going on. It made a nice contrast because I just used the darker colors for the base of the battle dress uniform and then add this like kind of plating with like bright purple all over it. I felt like it made a really, really good looking contrast to what I was making because I wanted to incorporate the classic colors. I really dug what they were going for. So I got the bow going yellow. I got the plating going this magenta color. One thing I couldn't do effectively was the like baby blue from the classic design. I didn't know how to incorporate that in a very confident way. Um, Leave your comments down below of what you think I should have done. So it's the one color I did leave out. I wasn't sure how to include it without having clashing with the other colors because it just didn't look right. It didn't go with the picture I had in my head, you know? So it was pretty fun to do these two together, and I didn't know how do I want to shade this, but that'll be brought up in just a minute. The bow itself was kind of a hassle to make. I ended up just making a really a really long C with a weird little handle in the middle, and the handle still bothers me. I don't like the way the handle turned out at all. I think it's one of the few things that I'm going to keep working on from this piece because I feel like learning how to draw a bow and arrow, if you're going to be making any kind of story, is a pretty basic thing to do. So the arrow is actually a part of the problem I didn't even know was going to be involved until I started making this drawing is I didn't want to add too many colors. I have a minor background in animation, you know. I do little skits and doodles here and there. Nothing really drastic that I put on the internet yet, but I do listen to a lot of the feedback that animators have in the industry. And one of the things you'd want to do is you want to simplify your drawings as much as possible if you're going to make high quality animations. If you're doing 2D art, simplify your art. You don't need over-designed characters to be drawn 30 times for 24 times in a mere second. That's a lot of line work to be done, a lot of shading. So you want to find this nice middle ground between detailed and simplified. So that's what I went with when I did this. And what I failed to realize was there's a lot more colors here going on than I originally thought. I neglected to think about what color the bow was going to be, what color were the quivers going to be, what color was the wood of the arrows going to be, the color of the tip of the arrow. These are all things I didn't even think about when making this. I just looked at two suits and thought to myself, how do I combine these? I never once thought to myself, what are the colors that I'm going to be including in his equipment? And that's what caused a bit of a meltdown in my brain, thinking to myself, oh, I don't want to complicate this color spectrum. I don't like assaulting people's eyes with cacophony of colors, you know? It just seems unnecessary. And it's not really my style to make things too overtly colorful. I like solid colors with two different tones of lighter and darker tones, and then black and white shadows and highlights. That's the style I go for. I don't go for gradient colors. I don't go for very offbeat colors like magenta or something like that. That's why I started with this because it was something out of my comfort zone. I wanted to see what I can do with it, how I could explore it. And one thing I do feel comfortable with is shading. I love shading so much. It's one of the things I did. all the time when I did traditional pen and paper art. It was something that I strove to perfect. And for as much as I know about it, there's still so much to learn, and that's probably one of the cool things about art is no matter how many years of experience you have, you could always have something new to add to your arsenal, and that's always exciting because it means that your art is always looking for new ways to improve itself. And something I got from manga was this like um, cross-hatching style of shading, where you just put lines in to indicate the shadows. Combining that with like the traditional inking of 1980s comic books, it created this nice blend of styles for shading for me. And I never really strayed from it afterwards when I discovered the two. I liked incorporating them together. And as you can see, I add highlights all throughout the body because I really like it to, I like to watch it pop, you know, it gives it a lot more of a 3D effect, as much as a 3D effect can be applied to a 2D object, at least, you know. But negative space is also just as important. It gives a lot of depth to your characters whenever you're making these. It's something that I did just by studying a lot of light in gaming, actually. The way light bounces off of gaming, it's something like ray tracing and how the technology of that affects the models in a game. I looked at that actually as reference to see how lighting affects um, the human body. It's something that's kind of abstract to bring up, but art is art regardless of what medium it is, you know? So that's where I look to my inspiration. It's just video game lighting. I like to see how gamers tackle that kind of thing when it comes to being a game developer, how your engine handles light, and this is one of the ways I noticed it. And it's something that it's an effect that I really enjoyed once I started incorporating it into my 2D art. So I hope you guys can appreciate that. As for the art piece itself, there wasn't really much left to do in my head. I just kind of finalized all the details after this point. I pretty much got everything I wanted where it should be. My character's proportioned the correct way, he's stationed the correct way, and I just thought to myself, okay, we got the colors down, we got the shading, we got the basic color gradients going on. So my mental taxation was pretty much done at this point. I'm just adding the fine details, as it were. So from here on in, I'll just tell you guys about what's been going on with me because a lot of the appeal that comes from doing YouTube is you don't have to be like this corporate entity of any sort. You can just be whatever you want. And one of the things I wanted to do with this channel is I just wanted to talk to you guys about what I am and what I like to do. Obviously, I do enjoy my art, but I also enjoy stuff like dancing. I do enjoy working out from time to time. Like in order, it goes from art, dancing, and working out. Those are the three things I mostly like to do, and video games as well. I love video games. Um, I did have a gaming channel, I still do, although it just became too taxing for me to keep up with. Every time I booted up my PC, it was always to play games, but it never felt like I was playing games. I felt like I was just getting footage for a job, as it were, because I don't know when it happened, but at a certain point, I crossed a threshold where video games were no longer something fun or a hobby, it became a job as well. And I just couldn't keep up with it anymore because I don't see that happening with my art anytime soon, but for video games and the way I was handling it, it definitely was. And you don't want that. You don't want your hobbies to become a mundane task, you know? And I don't see that happening with art anytime soon. Same thing didn't even happen to me when I did that with dance. I turned dance into a job as well. I was a dancer for a company for about 5 years, give or take. So I started when I was like 15. I left them when I was 19, so it's about 5 or so years. There's some extra change in there because of the months that I spent there, but I don't really remember. But 5, 6 years, something along those lines. And I still see them from time to time. They were a bachata, they were like a sort of Hispanic dance company that did hip hop as well. It was pretty fun to watch that kind of clash of cultures go on in the studio because the owner of the studio was Hispanic. He was a Mexican man. While all of the dancers that came in, they were all, well, they were Mexican as well, but they were all teenagers from America. So you have this American uh, ballet company working with American teenagers, and it created this weird clash of styles where a lot of the teenagers loved hip hop and they love breakdancing, that sort of thing. And they also had to learn how to do ballroom dancing. So one of the cool things that happened there was the first batch of students that my boss had years and years ago when he first started his company was they taught him about the art of hip hop. and how it started, specifically breaking in the Bronx and stuff like that. How breakdancing in New York originated, who were the biggest crews of the time, and how did they influence like future generations, that sort of thing. And in return, he taught them the art of bachata, cumbia, and other kinds of Hispanic style dancing that was pretty interesting to watch these two cultures clash with each other and so they could learn from each other. It was something that I came into a few years after it was already been developed. So by the time I got there, they've already been established for a good number of years. And when I joined them, I was a 15-year-old little boy who didn't know too much of anything about dancing other than like a little bit of pop and lock I did here and there. I spent a good time with them, but I eventually just grew out of it. I enjoyed my time with them, wishing them the best, and that's all. That's all that really happened afterwards. Nothing really too exciting there, aside from still seeing them at parties every once in a while, and once in a blue moon, I'll be asked to perform with them again. So if that ever happens, I'll show you guys what it's like. But I don't see that happening anytime soon. Not for a good while anyway. And that's been, as far as dance goes, one of my bigger contributions to the dance scene is I was a performer. That's all I really did. I recently auditioned to be part of a dance team for the NBA, and I did shockingly well for my first time. I made it all the way to final rounds. The way it works was you get day ones, day twos, and then uh, final day part one and final day part two. I made it all the way to part two, which is the last section you get before you get onto the team, and that's as far as I made it, unfortunately, because I didn't make the final cut. So that was an unfortunate thing. But it's okay because I'll audition next year and I'll let you guys know all about it if it ever happens. And right here, right here we have the finished product just about. This is going to be Kinetic Hawkeye. Kinetic is going to be my name for this channel and most of my social media, so look out for that one. And these are the two designs. And this is what it looks like all come together. You guys can go ahead and subscribe and check out my other videos here once those other videos are up. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you have any other suggestions you guys want to leave, go ahead and leave them in the comments, and I'll take a look at whichever one gets the most likes, and that'll be the next video. You guys take care and enjoy. Bye.